Hi guys, today we'll be going over Hearthstone, and today we'll be talking about some of the major issues with Hearthstone. Now these won't be technical issues. They'll actually be more game design oriented, and it has more to do with the actual wording of the cards. Now for those of you familiar with TCGs or trading card games, most trading card games have their own unique sets of words. So for instance, Magic the Gathering has an ability called Haste, which is very similar to Charge. And then they also have abilities like Death Touch as well. Just using those words in those games, when you hear them, you already know what they do. Mainly because Magic has a very well put together documentation explaining what those abilities are. And that way there's never really any confusion about how they work. Hearthstone, on the other hand, seems to have a problem really relaying what some of the cards do. For instance, if you take Emperor Cobra, you know, it has that poison symbol kind of at the bottom, but even though it has the wording, why hasn't that been turned into its own, distinct ability so we know exactly what to call it and we know what it is? So we're going to actually look at some of the cards, and we'll go into why some of these cards definitely need to be updated and why Blizzard also needs to take a moment out. And before, completely releasing another set, maybe sit down and think about some of the wording on these cards and make some adjustments, because it can be very confusing and frustrating for newer players. So let's go ahead and get into it. So let's take a look at the cards for a moment. Now what made me decide to put this together was when I saw Shadow Madness being used against me for the first time. Now as I primarily play Priest, I never understood why somebody would use this card. I mean, if you read the text, it's 4 mana and it says gain control of an enemy minion with 3 or less attack until the end of turn. So in my mind, that says I'm going to take an enemy minion, it'll come over, it'll have summoning sickness, meaning that it won't be able to attack, and it'll just essentially sit on my side until the end of my turn and go back to my opponent. Now, for those of you familiar with the card or familiar with Hearthstone, you know that's not the case. It actually will take a minion, bring it to your side, and that minion now has charge. For the duration of the turn that minion is on your side of the field, it has charge. It can instantly attack. Now, to me, that seems like a very important thing that you would put on the card. Because if you take an example, another card like Mind Control says take control of an enemy minion. However, it doesn't have the same effect. Now, Mind Control is actually a free card. You get it just by playing Priest. You'll just get it. However, Shadow Madness, you either need to craft it manually or you'll need to obtain it inside of a pack. So essentially what we have is we have one card that's given to you for free, Mind Control, in which you learn that after you take a minion, you cannot immediately attack with it. And then we come back with Shadow Madness that doesn't necessarily say anything different other than obviously it has a specific range of minions that it targets. But it never mentions that that minion will be given charge. Very important, and for some reason something that Blizzard decided to leave out on the card. Things like this are breaking the game design for Hearthstone, because what happens is a newer player gets the game and now they have to fight against cards that they may have overlooked only because they thought the card was worthless. And it's really upsetting to play against a really crappy card or pass over a card that really has potential only because the terminology isn't correct on the card. So that's just one example, and let's move on to some more. Now there are some cards that really tick me off, and these cards are Cleave, Forked Lightning, and Multi-Shot. Now, for those of you who don't know what the cards do, what they do is that they essentially deal a certain amount of damage to 2 random enemy minions, meaning that there should have to be 2 random enemy minions. Now, what's really interesting about these cards is that if you try to play these cards when your opponent only has 1 enemy minion on the field, do you know what happens? You can't play it. You have no option to play it. It considers there's not at least 2 minions, so you cannot use the card. So essentially the card is a dead card unless your opponent has at least 2 minions on the field. Now, maybe you can say, oh, well, that's unfair because if you play it and they only have 1 minion, it's guaranteed to hit that minion. Fair point. Well, what if my opponent only has 2 minions? Guess what? It's guaranteed to hit both minions. So why is it that I cannot use this card when there's only 1 minion on the field? Does that make sense? Now, what's really silly is that a card like Fan of Knives can deal 1 damage to all enemy minions even if there's not a minion on the field. So we have a set of cards that are useless unless my opponent has at least 2 minions on the field. But we have cards that say deal damage to all enemy minions. And if there's no minion, you can still play it. Hell, you can still shield slam and have 0 points of armor and still use shield slam. Now, how am I supposed to know this? Unless I go through extensive trial and error. That's not how you want people to play a game. You don't want people to be frustrated playing your game and finding out what they can and can't do based on if the card's green or not. That's just very lazy game design. Now, please don't get me wrong. This is not a video to bash Blizzard. This is not a video to bash the card game itself. I like Hearthstone. It's just a video to give constructive criticism. So hopefully this will be addressed in the future. That's all I want. I'm not asking for 100 packs free or anything crazy. I just want some of these issues to be looked into and hopefully addressed. But don't worry, we have other cards and other scenarios, so let's go on to those as well. The next card I want to talk about is Wild Growth. Now, Wild Growth is really, really weird. It almost makes no sense how this card works. So, if you get to 10 mana crystals and you play Wild Growth, the card should be useless because the card states gain an empty mana crystal. Should be worthless at that point, right? However, it's not. If you actually play it, you'll get a card called Excess Mana. And Excess Mana says, draw a card because you can only have 10 mana in your tray. Okay, so let's assume that any character, when they have more than 10 mana in their tray, they'll get the card Excess Mana, correct? I mean, because that would only be fair. Not the case. Because if my opponent plays Arcane Golem and I already have 10 mana, do you know what happens? I don't get a card. I don't get Excess Mana. The only way you get Excess Mana is by playing Wild Growth. So essentially, Wild Growth has a second ability that no one's aware of, because why would you play that card on turn 10 if you have 0 to play? How would you ever know that you were going to be able to draw another card if that card's in your hand? Why is that card not a dead card like so many other cards when they're played on turn 10? Let's look at the Warlock's Sense Demons card. Now, if you played that card and you no longer have demons in your deck, that card will actually give you a 1/1 worthless imp. Now, there's no way for you to know this. Once again, no one tells you. It just happens. Now, if we look at a card like Thoughtstill, if I play Thoughtstill and my opponent only has 1 card remaining in their deck, do I get 2 copies of that card? No, I only get 1 card. Now, if I play it and they have 0 cards in their deck, I get 0 cards. I get no type of return on the mana that I just spent. Now, why is it that certain cards do give you something when there should be nothing and other cards don't? Who makes that distinction? How, as a player, as a user of your game, how am I supposed to know this? And this is where I say there has just been some very bad wording and maybe even somewhat, game design as far as how these cards work. It just has not been explained well. When you have to see whole threads of people trying to figure out how Fugan and Stalag work and which one's going to trigger which, and if they die at the same time, will this happen? The reason those forums happen, the reason those threads blow up like they do, is because there's no clear answer. Blizzard, you've done a very bad job of giving us clear answers to how things work. We should not have to make a forum post to figure out how cards are going to interact with each other. Based on the way you word the cards should give us all the information we need. And I think new players coming in will have a very hard time, even though the game is obviously easy to pick up and play. If they want to go to a higher level and a higher level of understanding, I think the amount of time you have to spend practicing certain scenarios to find out answers, I think a lot of that stuff is really tedious, and I don't think anyone should have to do that. So that's my video. There are several more cards that have this problem, several. And if you guys know any and you want Blizzard to see it, please put those in the comments below. I'm begging you, please. Or I made a forum post on the Hearthstone forums as well. Please go there and express your concerns, because I really think that they need to see this, and that's the reason I wanted to put it into video form. So hopefully it can really gain a lot of attention, maybe get a lot of views, a lot of likes, and by doing that, we can hopefully get somebody from the team to maybe look into these and maybe take, you know, a week or so to clean up some of that wording and make sure that the cards are a true representation of what they do. So that's going to be it, guys. I'm KeenDX. Always, you can check us out on first3.com. Now, I know I don't normally cover Hearthstone a lot because I feel like there's a lot of people out there already doing a great job at it. But if you do want to see more Hearthstone content, let me know, and we can work on setting some of that up and getting it on the site. So thanks again for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.